Assalamu alaikum. I have a double disappointment today. Assalamu alaikum, Ala, Iman, Asra. Assalamu alaikum, Sanya. Assalamu alaikum. Ali, Amir, Ranna. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد. MashaAllah, great honor and a great privilege. As always, you're probably noticing that I don't have the text with me, which is part of the disappointing news. Not that I forgot the text. No, yesterday I had to give a commencement address for a group of Muslim graduates in Michigan. And just the talk was, alhamdulillah, commencement address is really just congratulations to the graduating class. But the travel, we got delayed. There was a bit of a storm in Michigan, and then, it took some time for the plane to get to the gate. I got home a little bit late, and then today was the first day of school for the kids. And so, wa alaikum salam, mashallah, long time. Alhamdulillah, I've been well. How have you been? Good. And so today was the first day of school for the kids. I just didn't get a chance to really look over the metin and prepare, my notes for commentary. So I thought it best today just to, have an open session, conversation, open Q&A, kind of like we did during COVID, inshallah. If anybody has any questions, issues with the book or with anything else that they want to discuss as a group, the floor is open, inshallah. Yes. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Long time, my sister. MashaAllah, welcome. Alhamdulillah. Don't burn me with the question. Right.
Now, let's say if the Imam says, can you say, I mean, if you said
That's your burning question. Alhamdulillah. Look at, when people say stuff like that, I'm always impressed with their piety. When for a lot of people, this isn't even something they think about. They're answering their phones during Jummah. It's like, sorry, I'm at Jummah. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. I've never seen that before, right? But two opinions on this. One, you shouldn't speak at all, right? Even if someone greeted you, you should return the greeting by gesturing, right? With ishara. Somebody, if it's the imam is giving the khutbah and listening to the khutbah, or at least remaining silent during the khutbah, is a part of the etiquette of attending the congregational prayer, as you mentioned. So even if somebody comes in, Assalamu alaikum, you just, you can gesture to them or not, but you actually shouldn't speak. The other position is that speech requires a mukhatab. It requires someone that you're addressing, right? So if the imam says the name of the Prophet ﷺ, and everybody in the congregation says sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or like every Jum'ah khutbah I've ever given, when we say inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. We say Allah and his angels send blessings and benedictions of peace upon the Prophet ﷺ. O you who believe, invoke peace and salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ. Everybody in the congregation says Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, and they say it bisawtin masmu', in an audible voice, but nobody considers that a breach of the etiquette of the congregational prayer. Why? Because they're not speaking to anyone. They're not saying, hey, Ranna, Salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. They're just saying it almost like, I would call that, and everybody knows I'm fond of using words that other people don't know, but like an effusion almost. Like you just say, it's like say someone was giving the khutbah, the imam makes a point, something that so he says something which resonates with you. You say, wow, it was speech, but you weren't. It's not like you were saying, hey, Ranna, wow, he just like he said something, it hits you, like that, wow, subhanallah, right? Now, some people, right, the first opinion, you shouldn't even say even that. Just maintain complete quiet. The position that I see most people adopting is that they say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, other things like that, right? So I think either way you go with saying sallallahu alaihi wasallam audibly, I don't think it's burning. I don't think it's burning, but it is impressive that you're thinking about Salatul Jum'ah, in that way. A lot of people you find, like just straight up talk, like we'll have conversations during Jum'ah. They will sit and just really, how's work? Go get lunch after that. I'm thinking Thai. You want to do Thai? Bubble tea? Okay. Bismillah. No, you really want to stay away from that. But saying sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I wouldn't scream it. I wouldn't scream it. But if you say it to yourself, I don't think. Imam Malik, the great scholar of Medina, would often be asked questions like that, and his response wouldn't be like a fiqh ruling, like this is halal, this is haram, he would say, I would hope that isn't so serious, right? I would hope that isn't so serious. That's one of those questions like, if the imam says the name of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi wasallam, can we say alayhi wasallam audibly? I would hope that isn't so serious. You know what I'm saying? Yes, some people say that the prayer begins when the imam begins to give the khutbah.
There's three people, I can't remember the other. Like one of them is a person who's not their parents, may Allah push him further into the religion, and then the other one is someone hears my name and they
don't say sallam. What's interesting about and you're right, this question does become a burning question, right? What's interesting about things like that is that the dominant opinion is that they don't have to be said out loud even. Right? So Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, famous scholar, wrote a very famous book called the Fath al-Bari, which is like the definitive commentary on the Hadith of Bukhari. He begins the book with no Bismillah. No, Imam Bukhari begins his book with no Bismillah. Like as you look at Jami' al-Sahih, like the collection of Imam Bukhari, he just starts it from the Hadith. No, there's no Bismillah in the book. And in Sahih al-Bukhari, he has the Hadith of the Prophet. Whoever begins an action without Bismillah, that action is cut off, right? It's abtal. It's like it doesn't have blessing. And they said, how could he begin a book with the hadith that says if you begin an action without the Bismillah, it's cut off from blessing, without beginning his book with the Bismillah? And Ibn Hajar, in his commentary, he said, how do you know he didn't say it? Maybe he didn't write it. Maybe he didn't write Bismillah, but maybe as he began to collect the hadith of the book, he said Bismillah. Right? Maybe a person heard the name of the Prophet ﷺ, and he didn't say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam out loud, but maybe he said it in his heart. Right? The other thing about that is they say that when Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima, that if the believer does it once, they have satisfied the amr, the obligation. Right? If he or she does it once, they've satisfied that obligation. All of us do it in our prayers, right? Those of us that regularly pray, we do it in our prayers. I do think that what the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was recommending there was an etiquette of how we should, invoke blessings when his name is mentioned. But I don't think it's, again, I would hope that that isn't so serious. Inshallah. Inshallah. Other questions, ideas. I know you got a lot of questions, Ish. Alhamdulillah. We open session today, Sheikh. Alhamdulillah. Open floor. My sister Sanya, you haven't asked a question in a long time. Oh, next time, Iman, I promise I will repeat the question, inshallah. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. I have a question. Why is it so hot in here? Good question. The floor is open. If anybody has a question, an idea maybe, something they've been thinking about, something they read.
Question.
Bismillah.
You know, when you own your life, can husband and wife hold hands when you talk?
Yes. I think husband and wife can't hold hands when doing talk.
Personal?
Well, in the Shafi'i school, husband and wife holding hands would break the wudu. So they wouldn't be able to hold hands. In the Hanafi or Maliki or Hambali schools, I think they would be able to hold hands. In the Shafi'i school, yes, touching, any physical touching breaks the wudu, which is a very stringent position. Any two people that are married or can be married, if they make physical contact with each other, skin to skin contact, it breaks the wudu.
And not really intense, but let's say you're passing the tool, give money to, before.
In the Shafi'i madhab, it breaks the wudu, right? And Imam Shafi'i's position on this is just, you have this respect that they've held this position that seems so unusual for so many generations. And it's still the dominant opinion that people of that school follow. And it's based on the idea when Allah says, وَلَا مَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء, if you touch women, that Imam Shafi'i says, no, this is touching. It means what it says. I am a master of the language of the Quran. Not me, but Shafi'i. And I know that what this says is exactly what it means. It is not a reference, a polite or gentle reference called kinaya to intercourse, nor is it only touching with lust or amorous touching. It is just touching. And the two other opinions are that it is a reference really to intercourse in the verse, not literal touching, but it's a polite reference. We have, in English, we have the same linguistic convention. It's called kinaya. It's a way of saying something in a polite way without being very direct, right? So, and it's amazing how you have these things like this that are common to different languages. So like in English, we say two people slept together. We don't mean that they got in bed and fell asleep. It's a polite reference to sexual intercourse. Or years ago, people wouldn't ask a man and woman whether or not they had a physical relationship. They would say, "Do you live together?" Because the idea that if you do live together, then you probably do have a physical relationship. Or the way we say, I need to use the washroom. Right? It's a polite reference to urination and defecation. Nobody says, I need to defecate. That would just, that would sound like, wow. Would you say, I need to use the restroom, right? So in the Hanafi school, they say that this is just a reference to intercourse, that Allah says touching, but it's a kinaya lil jima', and it's something that necessitates is yujibul ghusl. You have to make ghusl. The Malikis, they take a mid-course. They say it's touching that is sensual or sexual in some way. If it's just touching, holding hands, or now holding hands can be sensual. Depends on how the hand is being held, what is intended and what is experienced. But if it's just holding hands so that we don't get separated, or walking down the street holding hands as we shop on State Street or something like that, doesn't have to be an amorous. Even even that in the Shafi'i school, even that, just if contact is made. Which one thing that I will say about madhahib is the cool thing about madhahib is when you learn a madhab, you learn that every madhab has things that are permissive and easy, and has things that are very stringent and a little bit restrictive. So it balances out. So even though they have that position in the Shafi'i madhab, but the cool position in the Shafi'i madhab that I'm sure our sisters love is that because Allah says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُسِكُمْ, wipe in wudu, wipe of your head. بِرُؤُسِكُمْ. He didn't say وَامْسَحُوا رُؤُسَكُمْ. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُسِكُمْ. Wipe of your head. In the Shafi'i school, touching any part of your head with your hand wet satisfies the obligation in wudu. You don't have to wipe your hair or like use it like this. That's it. So you see people in the masjid and they're making wudu, people that follow that method, and you're like, you got water dripping down your ears and down your neck, your shirt is wet, and you're like, wow, that looks really easy. It's just like, that's it. Right? So you have things like that. In the Maliki school, it's food. Food is indulged. For people that, even though I think sometimes that's exaggerated a little bit, Malikis aren't like everybody's, the dog is man's best friend. You probably won't find that written anywhere. But dogs are not impure. They're not unclean. Their saliva is not unclean. Their fur is not unclean, right? Their presence does not make a space unclean, right? In food, other than pork and meat that is not, slaughtered properly, everything is fair game. Whether it has claws, fangs, whether it eats whether it's carnivorous or. Whereas in some madhabs, you have some rulings like you should not eat carnivorous animals. Like if an animal eats other animals, you shouldn't eat that animal. Or an animal that has makhalib, has claws. Like birds that have, like birds of prey. In some schools, you shouldn't eat birds of prey, right? Because again, they eat other birds, right? Shellfish, like for Hanafis, shellfish. Tell you a funny story, man. I used to go to a madrasa. Wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't tell this story because you guys might know the madrasa I used to go to. But anyway, one of the teachers there, asked me if I wanted to run an errand with him. Listen, now they're Hanafis, very serious about that legal school. And we pull up to a place, and he took off his topi. He took off his kufi. He's like, can I trust you? I'm like, yo, what are we doing here? I'm like, yo, please don't tell me you're about to like pull out some weed or something like that. Or, what I'm saying? I'm thinking he's about to go up under the seat and pull out some Mad Dog or something. We about to go to Vino 36, a wine tasting bar or something. He's like, there's a lot you don't know about me. I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, I try to follow the dictates of the Sharia, but there are some things that make me weak. I'm like, man, I mean, we all try our best, but what are we talking about? Man, this man walked in Lawrence and got some shrimp, man. I'm like, you tripping like that over some shrimp? I'm like, subhanAllah, but I think like, people that are very strict about stuff like that, but every madhab has its, places of greater stringency and vigilance, and also places of relaxation and permissiveness and ease. MashaAllah. Yes, Sanya.
More interpretation of law versus more rational. You see pitfalls.
Well, I think every interpretation of, well, when it comes to literal and rational, even traditionally, there are debates about that. Most people, and this is kind of where I come down to, say that if we're talking about worship, things that are done for the purpose of worship, they are not to be subjected to rationale. So why is sunset prayer 3 cycles of prayer? Why is the afternoon prayer 4, late afternoon 4? Why is the dawn prayer 2 cycles of prayer? We don't. There's really no way. These are things that are termed tawqifi. We can't really, even why does God say we shouldn't eat pork? Some people say it's because pigs are unclean. I've had farmers tell me chickens are as unclean as pigs. Right? No, we don't eat pigs or of pigs because God told us not to. That's it's a matter of worship. On the other hand, things that are what we call mu'amalat or worldly transactions, like marriage, like divorce, like inheritance, like buying and selling. These are things that should always be based on clear rationales. These are not things that we're doing just to say, hey, God told us and we did it. No, there's a purpose here. There's something, there's an aim. There's an aim, there's an objective. There's something that we're trying to secure here that is practical, that is tangible, that is discernible. And if in a particular context, that way of doing it does not bring about that desired objective or benefit or end, we opt for something more dynamic. We say like, this is not right, right? So even traditional scholars would have no problem departing from literal interpretations of the law when the aim of something was practical, not like to obey God. But it's like, no, there's a clear protection that we're trying to afford to wives, or a clear protection that we're trying to afford to children here. There's a clear protection that we're trying to afford to people doing business here. And we aim to keep track of those objectives in different contexts. And that necessitates being dynamic. You know what I'm saying? I think religion, and now, as you have a way of always doing, son, I think taking me into a philosophical place, I think what we want with religion, and this is, forgive me if I sound like I'm kind of, wading through some scattered ideas, is only because I am. I think that one of the things that religious people want is we want to feel as though what we're doing is not just a product of our own thinking. Because if it were a product of my thinking, it really wouldn't benefit me as religious. It's like, this is something it's almost like when I meet people, and I know I'm going all over the place, but I'm coming back. I always come back. It's like when I meet people that say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, right? I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. My question is always, so the God that you serve, right? If you believe in a God, some people are like, I believe in, the metaphysical, but not exactly a God, right? But the God that you serve, how do you know about the character of that God? Meaning what that God likes, what displeases that God, what that God blesses, what that God destroys. Does the God that you serve have any requirements? Does the God that you serve love charity? Does the God that you serve hate vanity? But when you say what I think they come to realize is that either A, the God that I serve, the God that I worship, is really just an extension of myself. I think this is what I like. And so God becomes an endorsement of those things, right? And if one arrives to that conclusion, you could end up saying, well, if this is really me, then why am I elevating it? This is what I like. This isn't, I don't have any knowledge that this is something that God likes, but it's what I like. Or B, you come to find out that even though you don't subscribe to Christianity as a belief or Islam as a belief, your conception of the divine is still basically from one of those sources. Maybe you admit that grudgingly, but some people like that, like especially like non-Muslims that I encounter, it's like, okay, you're not religious, but you still serve a very Christian God. The God that you serve is still the character of that deity is still very much based in the teachings of the Bible and the teachings of the Old Testament or something like that. I say that to say religion involves relinquishing or giving up something in the self in preference to that which is with God. And this is why tradition makes us feel very good. Makes us feel good when we know this isn't for me. It's like, why am I praying these 3 units of prayer when the sun sets? Because God told me it's not. I didn't make this up. This is the religion of God. So it gives you that religious feeling. Sometimes we seek that in places where it shouldn't be sought. And when we do that, we're worshiping history instead of worshiping God. It's like we're doing something just because it's old, just because people before used to do this. And that gives us a feeling like we're doing something spiritual, like we're doing something that involves self-sacrifice, like we're doing something that it's a part of a religious experience, because this is a time-honored thing, man. We're just doing, but remember, so many places in the Quran, God questions people about idolatry, and their response is always what? This is what we found our fathers doing. It's just a time-honored thing. It's tradition at this point. No, we don't sacralize tradition for the sake of tradition, right? Tradition is to serve an end. And if you are rooted in those ends, this is perhaps what it comes down to. Oh, okay. Masha, people are asking questions online. I'm not even looking. Sorry, hold on. One second. Okay. Coming to you in 1 second, Iman. If you are connected to those ends and you are prayerful, see, I think the thing that negatively impacts our confidence in what we think, what we feel concerning our tradition and its implementation is our spiritual weakness. You see, if I know that I'm someone that reads the Quran, I'm someone I pray, I'm someone that my experience is a religious one. And then I'm seeing this aspect of the Islamic tradition, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this serves the maqsad. I don't know if this serves the objective here. Maybe I can engage that negotiation more confidently. But if I don't believe in myself and I know, man, I barely pray. I barely read the Quran, right? I do all kind of stuff that's haram. I'm gonna say what? The reason I don't want to do it is because I'm weak. It's just that my iman is weak. See, if my iman was stronger, I would just do what's written. But if you know, I mean, yes, I'm not saying you should be proud, but if you know, no, I'm making sincere effort on behalf of my faith. It's just that this hukam, this ruling, it's not sitting well with me. And then we don't engage those conversations as individuals. We open them with other people. You know, we are a community of believers, right? A trans-historical, trans-geographic community of believers. That in and of itself gives us a great tool in discussing the will of God. And the will of God must be discussed. But the fact that you are a Desi woman, I'm an African-American man, I'm guessing my sister's a Somali woman. Yes. You are an Arab woman, mashallah. Another African-American man, a Desi woman. And all of us with different experiences, different histories, different sensibilities, different sensitivities are looking at this ruling or this ayah or this hadith, and we are conversing about what does God want from us here, right? I think that conversation is the essence of what Islamic law has been about for the last 1400 years. It's that conversation, right? And people that have great skill, meaning they make compelling arguments because they know the sources, know the language, and also they're known for being upstanding. They're usually given a great amount of weight in terms of their opinion on these matters, right? But it's always going to be a negotiation. You know, I feel like there's a wisdom in the fact that Allah Ta'ala has not given us a church. We don't have a pope. We don't have anyone that just, this is orthodoxy and every other position is invalid, heterodox. That's not Islam. We don't have that. Everything we have is conversation, negotiation, difference of opinion, tolerance. I could disagree with someone. Say, look, I disagree with you. Doesn't mean that she's insincere and I'm sincere. We sincerely disagree, right? We sincerely disagree. Now, I think the weight of tradition has to be factored in. The weight of, kind of a diverse set of opinions about the matter have to be factored in, right? We have to be willing to look at our own particularity, right? This is becoming more technical than I intended it to be, but this is one of the practical usages of fatwa. Because when we talk about a hukum, a ruling, we're saying this is something of general applicability to everybody. Fatwa is where we're looking at your particular situation. With all of the richness that we have in our tradition, in Islamic law, a person asking my particular situation, what do you think here? Right? So it's like the famous hadith of Asma bin Qais, the woman who used to lead her people in prayer. She came to the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith that has some weakness in it, but it's a hadith. And she said, there's nobody among the men of my village who are capable of leading prayers. They don't know anything about Islam. Is it okay if I lead them in prayer? And in the hadith, the Prophet said, yes, you lead them in prayer. And they say she would lead, but she would lead from the back, right? So the men would still stand in front, the women were standing back, and she would lead them without them looking at her. My point is that all of the legal schools that are aware of this hadith, they never changed kind of the dominant ruling because they said it was something very particular. It's a very particular situation that she explained, and the answer of the Prophet was a very particular answer. So that's what fatwa is about. It's like, okay, this is my situation. What should I do Islamically? So good example of, I think, the intricacy of fatwa. Person comes to me, I'm a new Muslim. I've been married to my husband for 30 years. Now, I understand that Muslim women, by the traditional law, should not be married to non-Muslim men. But me and this man have been married for 30 years. I just embraced Islam. Do I have to leave him? And is it considered illicit for he and I to have any kind of physical relationship, etc.? That is something that is answered through fatwa. And I've seen the opinion of many scholars that say, just go back to your home with the man with whom you live, your husband, and just make dua for him. Make dua for him that he comes around. But give yourself a time limit. Maybe after 3 years, 4 years, if he doesn't, you make the decision about what you want to do. But that's fatwa. That's fatwa. It's like, I've never seen anybody say in that scenario, for you all to have a relationship, haram, leave the house right now, that's it. Say, no, me and this man have been together 30 years. We're in our 60s now. I just embraced Islam. What should I do? And we have fatwa for situations like that. You know what I'm saying? Or a person that says, I'm working at a liquor store. I don't like the job that I do, but it's how I support my family. Right? I know that what I'm doing is haram. Fatwa, we say, it is your religious responsibility to look for a new job every day that you're not at work. If you don't do that, you're religiously negligent. When you find that new job, you have to quit. We don't just say quit, let your children starve. That's why we have, fatwa. It's like every day that you're not working, if you're not out pounding the pavement, looking for a new job, you're sinful. You're religiously negligent. Every day that you're not working, try to find new work. Once you find new work that is halal, you have to quit. But that we see that in fatwa. You're not going to see a ruling. It's permissible for Muslim women to be married to non-Muslim men, or it's permissible for Muslims to work in liquor stores. Those are all situations that are being, addressed as personal situations. Iman had a question. She said, in your opinion, why is the Hambali school not embraced by many in the USA? The Hambali school is embraced by many in the USA in the guise of the Salafi minhaj, right? So the minhaj of the Salafis is kind of like a redacted Hanbali madhab, really. I mean, a lot of it is, in terms of the legal theory of Salafis, it's a way of interpreting Sharia that places a great deal of evidentiary value in single hadith, ahad hadith, right? If a hadith has an authentic chain and it's muttasil, it goes back to the Prophet ﷺ, it is expressive of God's will. That's Imam Ahmed's approach. That's the approach of the Hambali school. That is the approach of the Salafis. So the Hambali school does have some identification in that, some representation rather, in that way. Do you, and then her second question was, do you have to identify with the school of thought? No. I think it would, it's asking if a person has to be identified with a madhab is like saying, does a person have to go to a doctor? Amir, do people have to go to doctors? No, you don't want to. Do you think it's wise to? Do you think it's wise to? Do you think it's wise to? Why? Why do you think it's wise to? Because this is, they've dedicated themselves to formal study. And the most important thing about doctors, and some of us don't realize this, they belong to interpretive communities, right? They belong to a community of specialists. You see, and that is how you get a medical degree. You have to have rotations and residency. It says what? I have studied and been approved by people that are in the field. If I just take a book of medicine myself and I do my own medical study, even if I am a superior autodidact, like I'm very good at reading and very good at comprehending, and even if I can prove to people any test that they give you in med school, I can pass it. Give it to me. I've been studying medicine on my own for the last 50 years. I don't think any of you would come to me for a checkup. Why or why not? They said, well, babe, you're a doctor? Well, not technically. Not technically. But all of the curricular reading for most med schools, I've done it. So let me take a look at you here. You're like, man, get there. I'm out of here. Man. Because it's not just about, we know that you sat with the book and you've memorized and you've learned. And no, have you had your knowledge certified, right? There's qualification and there's certification. Qualification just means I really know what I'm saying. Certification, people that know what they're saying have said, she knows what she's saying. That's what a degree represents. Certification. No, we have certified that Ali knows what he's talking about. And that's, I mean, with a madhab, you get some of that certification, some of that authenticity, some of that community, interpretive community, some of that tradition. You get some of that. And I think it's useful, but I hope that helps. Iman. Oh, mashallah. Allah said, we have a few new babies forthcoming in the family. Alhamdulillah, not ours. And then she said, I'm wondering if there are any specific sunnahs about how to welcome these babies into the world, or things we should avoid, especially if the parents are not particularly religious. Shout out to Allah and Eric, one of my favorite couples in the community, alhamdulillah. It's interesting. One of the beautiful ways of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was that he opted to transform things that were negative instead of removing them from the lives of people. And I think that this, it's subhanallah. One of the mistakes that moralists and moral philosophers and behavioralists, one of the mistakes that I think they make is that they don't recognize there is as human beings, we have certain needs, right? We have certain needs. And if a person tells us just to ignore one of those needs, forget that, we will probably not succeed at that. If someone says, forget that, right? Don't even think about that. It's not important. But if we actually know, no, it's very important to me. It will be very difficult for us to completely ignore something that on a visceral, almost cellular level, like we have a need for this thing. So like one thing that comes to mind is that as people, we are naturally, in my experience, we have a natural attentiveness to the qualitative. Like there's a part of us that always wants to say, this is okay, this is better, this is the best. Whether we're talking about schools, if we're talking about cars, if we're talking about neighborhoods, if we're talking about clothes, there's something in human beings that tends to reject the generic. If we say they're all, it's kind of reductionist, it's all the same. We tend not to accept, no, it's not, as connoisseurs of anything will tell you, no. The difference is the difference. The difference is the difference, right? No, we don't. So when people who are encouraging people to live with greater simplicity are trying to convince them that, it's all the same. Bentley, Hyundai, what does it matter? Right, it's all the same. It's Harvard, Harold Washington. What is it? What does it mean? VVS diamond, cubic zirconia. What's the difference? They all sparkle. It's all the same. I guarantee you will have a very hard time convincing people that those distinctions don't matter. Because those kinds of distinctions, they do matter to people. On the other hand, if you said, yes, there are distinctions in worldly attainment, but even more important are the distinctions in spiritual attainment. In the same way that you see that platinum and plastic are not the same, a person of greater generosity and a person of selfishness are not the same. They're not the same. So the Prophet ﷺ said what? People are like mines. Some are of gold and some are of silver, and some are of salt, and some are saying that I'm not going to deny that life has a qualitative aspect. You won't find me trying to convince people that a Rolls Royce and a Honda are the same thing, because you probably won't succeed at that, right? Or that living on the Gold Coast and living in Inglewood, it's just a house. Who cares? You probably won't convince anybody of that. But if you say much more important than the difference between the Gold Coast and Inglewood is the difference in a heart that gives, a heart that is charitable, a heart that is self-sacrificing, and a heart that is selfish, a heart that is self-satisfied and overindulgent. It's meaning like, but the qualitative aspect of life is something that people see. That's what I'm saying. Similarly, around like traditions and things like that, the Prophet ﷺ was always reluctant when they came to him with something that was a tradition of theirs. This is something we like, man. We like this. You find a reluctance to say it's completely garbage. Like, man, that's garbage. That has no value. He would often say, replace it with this. I know how important this is to you. This is really important. Do this. So one area that we see that is aqiqah. The term aqiqah, the pagan Arabs would sacrifice animals when a baby was born. That was something that they did. And they would give some, it was like, it was a sacrifice to show one's gratitude. Like, man, my child has been born. It's kind of like when you see the movies and the baby's born and the dad gives cigars, everybody, it's like, I want everybody to partake in celebration because I'm happy that my child has been delivered successfully. So that was a regular tradition of theirs. The only thing is they would take some of the blood and smear it on the baby's face, which is just a strange thing, right? And I don't think that it was a cultural expectation that some of the meat would be given in charity. I think you just slaughtered the animal and, that was, you performed the slaughter, you ate the meat, maybe you had a party, I don't know. When they came to the Prophet ﷺ, they said, when our babies are born, this is how we like to occasion their births with the aqiqah. The Prophet said, perform. If you want to perform the aqiqah, perform it, right? Perform the aqiqah, right? But don't rub blood on the baby's face. That's not good. Don't rub the animal's blood on the baby's face. Instead, take something sweet, like some honey or a small piece of date, place it on the baby's tongue. Now, And it's a gesture for giving something sweet to the child in hope that the child will become sweet. It's a gesture, it's symbolic. With the date, however, the child does not have to digest the date. At that time, most children are just nursing. They're not, you just place a little piece of date on the tongue and you remove it. Some people actually give the child and make the kid swallow it. No, you just place a little piece of date on the tongue and you just take it off. Or you just place kind of like just the residue of some honey on the tongue and you just rub it. You slaughter, right? You slaughter an animal, right? You distribute the meat. You can have a party. The Prophet ﷺ would recommend that they would cut the hair of the baby, right? Some babies are born with a lot of hair. Some babies are not born with very much. Some adults don't have very much. That was a joke, by the way. Right? Some adults don't have very much. They would weigh the hair, and they would give that amount in silver and in dinars or dirhams. You know, these traditions are things that you can do. When the baby was born, they would make the adhan in the right ear of the baby, the iqama, you know, the call to prayer in the right ear of the baby, you know, the call that the prayer has commenced in the left ear of the baby. Traditions like this, right? It is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to give children good names. You know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not change names except names that were bad names. He didn't change everybody's name, right? So there was a woman who, in a really sadistic outcome, her family had named her Shaqiyya. Her family named her Shaqiyya, which means like wretched. They named her Shaqiyya. And so when she was introduced to the Prophet, he asked her name. He said, "What is your name?" And she said, "Shaqiyya," like wretched. And he said, No. Your name is Jamila, beautiful. Right? Your name is Jamila. So some names he would change, like, no. If a name implied shirk, right, associating a partner with Allah, he would change the name. So if someone's name was like Abdul Shams, you know, servant of the sun, like Abu Hurairah, his name was Abdul Shams. He said, no, your name is Abdul Rahman, right, servant of the most merciful, right? So giving children good names is a sunnah. The Prophet mentioned, so like suggesting these names, Allah, he mentioned that of the names that are loved by Allah, he said the name Abdullah is loved by Allah. Allah loves the name Abdullah. No Abdullahs in class today, right? For boys. Amatullah, which is the female equivalent of Abdullah, is Amatullah, is love for girls. He said names that have Ha Mim Dal as a jidr or a root. So Ahmed, Muhammad, Mahmoud. What's another one? Yeah, right, Hamdi, Hamad, names that have Ha Mim Dal as a jidr, and names. The name Abdul Rahman, I mentioned that, didn't I? Yeah, the name Abdul Rahman, Abdullah, names that have Ha Mim Dal. You know, the Prophet ﷺ actually said that the best of names is my name, which is the best name is my name. You know, so you'll find in the Muslim world, in fact, I think it's well known at this point that Muhammad is the most common name in the world. There are more people named Muhammad than any other name in the world. Right? I think the second most popular is like, I don't know, Luke or something like that. I don't know, something like that. But the most popular name in the world is Muhammad. So, you know, giving the baby a good name, and I think, you know, playing the Quran for children is very nice. You know, to habituate them to the sound of the Quran, the recitation of the Quran. And then I think Sunnahs concerning welcoming babies into the world. Giving gifts on behalf of children, giving them gifts, right? Giving them gifts that are kept in safekeeping until they become older, things like that. Just showing them that they're loved. They have a community. I think this is very important. Alhamdulillah. Other questions, ideas? Bismillah.
I was playing with a group, there was a guy that was really adamant that it wasn't on the phone.
No, I've never heard that. I've never heard that in my life. She says that she was playing with a group, and there was a guy who was adamant that the women couldn't pray behind him because he wasn't a relative of theirs. That when people say things like that, you think to yourself, you think to yourself, you're very strange, man, aren't you? No, you think. So how does anybody pray behind the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu? How does anybody pray anywhere? How does anybody pray if women can only pray behind their relatives? How you think when someone says something like that, you think, okay, like no, when you hear something like that, you just say,
well, we just like thanked him and then tried to pray, but he was just kept
there's a story, and I don't know what. Maybe I'm the only person that finds the story funny, but I always find the story funny. Abu Hanifa, right, great scholar, sitting in the mosque, and a man that he didn't know walked into the mosque, and he immediately began to the man was so striking in how he looked. The man looked like a person of great dignity, great gravitas, and knowledge, that he had been relaxing. Abu Hanifa had been relaxing. But when he saw the man, he began to straighten himself, right? And so the man sat and said, "Can I ask you a question?" Abu Hanifa said, "Yes." He said, what should I do if the time of Fajr is after sunrise? And Abu Hanifa put his legs back out like this. Kind of saying nah, man, which is not to say be arrogant to people. But when someone asks me a question like that, when someone says something like, if you can only pray behind me if you're related to me, I just put my leg, that's why I put my legs out. Before I was like this. This is the Imam, he's about to lead us in prayer. If you're not my relative and you're a woman, you can't pray behind me. It's just that's just, there is such a thing as, not everybody's intelligent. Yeah, as I said, not everybody's intelligent. Some people just, what? It is that job. I'm guessing this man had a very large beard.
Not really.
Oh, he did?
It was a couple months ago, I don't really remember.
So I don't know.
It was also divine, so I knew it was questionable, but I just was curious.
No, actually, maybe he was suggesting, because you guys were at the masjid.
We're actually outside.
Maybe, I don't know. If you guys were just outside, I have no clue. I was gonna say maybe he was saying something about women coming to the masjid for prayers other than Fajr and Isha is makruh, is disliked in some interpretations of law, which I think are just, again, misapplications of history. I think that's when you hear things like that, you think to yourself, are you thinking about what you're saying? I remember hearing a hardcore Hanafi brother saying this, that in our madhab, it is disliked for women to come to the masjid for prayers other than Fajr and Isha. And I remember asking, why? Why is that? He said, well, because Fajr and Isha is dark outside. And, the idea of women being a fitna or, women being bothered by people, it's less because people can't really see them. I said, you do realize there's street lights and electricity now, right? You do realize that, right? He said, yeah, but again, as Sanya was saying, it's kind of what's in the book, right? I said, let me get this straight. I said, what's the ruling of a woman going to the water tower to go shopping? He said, permissible. It's mubah, it's permissible. I said, what's the ruling of a woman going to the grocery store? He was permissible. What's the ruling of a woman going to her job? Permissible. Visiting one of her friends? Permissible. But going to the house of Allah is disliked? What sense does that make? What sense does that make? How do you fix your mouth to say something like that in a majority non-Muslim society? What sense does that make? So some things, it's like, yes, there is tradition that encourages women to pray at home. But I think those traditions have been grossly misapprehended. I think those traditions from the Prophet ﷺ are actually ensuring women that domestic responsibility is not going to prevent them from reward, right? Women are saying like the men are, I think people forget that, the Sahabiyat of the Prophet ﷺ, may God be pleased with them, they wanted what the men had, in the sense like, we're not like second class Muslims or something like that. So when they were hearing about like merits of praying at the masjid and stuff like that, and they know that a lot of the men are out, they get to do that. We have children, we have other responsibilities. We don't get to make it to the mosque as much. The Prophet ﷺ was ensuring them that, no, your prayer in your home is even better than the mosque, right? Because of the value of serving your family. Like you're praying, like what you get for praying there, he doesn't even get for praying in the masjid, right? But I think some people have twisted that to limit women's access to social space. You see what I'm saying? The Prophet actually said, do not prevent the female servants of Allah from the mosque. It's right there in the Sahih. It's right there in the rigorously authenticated hadith. Don't prevent them from the mosque. Don't do that. But I think we've taken this idea that, women praying at home is encouraged. And we've just gone somewhere completely different with it, I think, as a community. Other things as we wind down?
I was wondering if you could elaborate on kind of custom notes right now that is written on the note.
Okay. Qada and Qadr. On one level, they're just different words. They refer to different things. Qada is the divine decree, right? It is the divine decree. Qadr is that decree coming into your life, right? Qada and Qadr. So think of it as, let me see an analogy here. Think of me programming something. I've programmed something. That's the qada. I've arranged this program. I've put this together. As you begin to use the system, the operating system, how you experience it, so it going from me to the program, or me to the operating system, right? And I know nothing about technology, so if this is a very bad example, pardon me. But my programming of it is qada. As you experience the program, it's qadar. You see, it's like, it's like steps. Now, what you're experiencing in qadar is my qada, if that makes any sense. Right? Ali, are you with me?
Yeah.
Meaning like, this is what I have programmed. So for me to the program is qada. From the program to you is qadar. You got it? Well, not really. Right? So it's describing different stages of the same process. If that makes any sense. Right? One is me putting the train on the track, me putting the pieces. The other is you operating the train going around. Right? So, but all of these things are part of one process. Right? But these are different stages of the process being defined. So one, like you said, qada is on the lawh al-mahfuz, right? The preserved tablet, when the Prophet ﷺ said, rufi al-qalam wa tajaffaf al-suhuf, that the pen has been lifted, and tajaffaf al-hibr, and the ink has dried, right? The pen has been lifted and the ink has dried. That is qada. God has already decreed qada. As we experience it, so this, me doing this, that's the qadr of Allah. Allah decreed that. Us being right here, right? We experience it as qadr, right? That which was inscribed on the lawh, when we experience it, it's qadr. God inscribing it on the lawh is qadr. You got it? Alhamdulillah. Other things as we wind down. Next week, we will be back to the Shama'il. MashaAllah. For what?
For Labor Day.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
The IC is closed on.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. I look forward to that. Inshallah. Give me something to look forward to, inshallah. Man, guys online, please come back, man. We miss you. I mean, we love the virtual. But you guys used to come and spend time with us. You know, it's like we can't get the attendance of our space back up, man. Come back, inshallah. Come back, inshallah. We miss you. Assalamu alaikum.